What's going on, you guys? How's it going? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning back into another video. Today's video, I'm getting prepared for next season. I'm going to be doing my tier list for every single team headed into the season. I'll show you guys the tiers in a second and how I have it organized. I do want to preface and say on my Instagram, I actually did a standings projections for every single team in the league. I did top producers, I did breakout season, underachievers, and trade bait for every team. And kind of listed them where I think they're going to finish. Obviously, not everyone agrees with me, but if you want to go over and take a look at that, I will have a link to my Instagram in the top of the description. But today's video, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to be ranking every team from bottom of the league to top of the league. I'm going to be kind of putting them in tiers to where I think they fit this year. So I have some tiers here. You guys can see it on the screen. I have Cup Contender, which is teams that I think can go on and win the Stanley Cup. I have Playoff Locks, teams that I think should be a playoff team. I'd be surprised if they weren't. I have a Wild Card, which are teams that I think will be just on the outside looking in, competing for a wild card spot, and should honestly be in the playoffs. They'll be very close. I have No Man's Land, which are teams that don't make the playoffs. I don't think will be in a wild card spot, but also aren't like bottom of the league. They're kind of just in that no man's land. And then we have Draft Lottery, which are teams that I think will be at the bottom of the league competing for that draft lottery. Of course, this is all my opinion. Everyone's going to have their own opinions on how teams play and how teams do. So don't be afraid to let me know what your guys' thoughts are down in the comments. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let's get into it. So we'll start off with the first team here. I don't know how they put all these teams in order, but I'm just going to go with what's here. And we got the Colorado Avalanche. I think they should be a playoff lock. I don't necessarily think they're a cup contender anymore. I still don't know really well. I still don't really know what's going on with Nichushkin. I still kind of feel that their depth isn't the greatest. They got Middlestad as their second line center, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. He just hasn't shown that he's like a really solid second line center yet. I think he's like a low end second line center, high end third line. So, I mean, if he improves, then that's good for them, obviously. I just, for something about them, I just don't see them as a team that's going into the playoffs, and I'm thinking this team should win the cup. Chicago Blackhawks, I think they're still a draft lottery team. I know they improved a bit, and some people think they've improved enough to kind of be out of the basement. I don't really see that's the case. I think they've improved for sure, and you'll still see some growth from players, but I think kind of a lot of teams have improved. I just don't see them being out of that like basement. The Columbus Blue Jackets are, again, I see them as a draft lottery team again. I don't think they've improved. I know they kind of went crazy a few seasons ago with their defense, and that didn't do anything. I still think they're obviously going to get some growth from some young guys. Hopefully Kent Johnson can take that next step. Hopefully Fantilli gets better and better, like he probably will. I just don't see them. They're not there yet to get out of that. St. Louis Blues. I was tough to put them in a wild card spot, but I'm going to throw them in no man's land. St. Louis Blues are one of my favorite teams. They're my second favorite team. Something about this team, I don't know if they have what it takes to be a wild card team, but I don't think they're a draft lottery team. I think this team is actually perfect for the no man's land list. I just see them kind of in that middle of trying to kind of rebuild on the fly, trying to retool, but still not being good enough to compete, still not being bad enough for draft lottery, just like right in that middle no man's land. The Boston Bruins are a tough one. I think they have a really good team, and I'm going to put them in playoff lock. I think they have a hell of a team. I like the additions. I like Lindholm, although I think they overpaid for him, but I like him. I'm a big fan of Zadorov. He just looks like a Boston Bruin. Again, I think they overpaid for him, but he just fits that team so well. He literally looks like he should be on that team. And I still think they have a really strong team. I just don't think they're as good as some teams in the NHL. The Montreal Canadiens are another team that I kind of want to throw in no man's land. I again see them just being on that outside of a wild card spot. I don't see them as a draft lottery team. I don't see them as like a few points out of the playoffs. Again, like St. Louis, I just kind of see them just hovering just safely where they're going to be, just in the middle. The Vancouver Canucks, I see them as a playoff lock. Vancouver Canucks are my favorite team, if you guys don't know. I think they took big steps forward last year, and I think they're only going to improve. A lot of people seem to think they're going to fall off, and I have my fingers crossed that that is not the case. I really hope they just put the gas pedal down and they improve even more from last year. The Washington Capitals, I'm going to put them in a wildcard team. They barely squeaked into the playoffs last year, and I think this year they even have a more improved roster. There's still some question marks for me on that team, so because of that, I'm putting them in a wild card, not a playoff lock. They still have some question marks how this team's going to gel. Will Ovi get back to what Ovi does? So on and so forth, but I do think they should be a wild card team, whether they make it or just barely miss. I think they'll be around that. New Jersey Devils, I think they got to be a playoff lock this year. I think anything short of playoff berth for the New Jersey Devils has to be a fail. That's just my opinion. They have to see this year as the year they have to make the playoffs. Anaheim Ducks, I think they're a draft lottery team. Again, I think they improved. I think the young players are going to get better, but I just don't think it's been enough to get them out of the basement. Calgary Flames are kind of the opposite in the sense that they haven't improved. If anything, they're trying to get worse. I see them being a draft lottery team as well. I see them kind of in that bottom tier of the NHL. The Philadelphia Flyers are kind of a weird one. I think they should be a draft lottery team. I think they're going to be in no man's land. I think they're going to be that team just kind of in the middle of who the heck knows where they are, what are they doing. They're trying to get younger, but they still have some good older players on there like Couturier. I just don't know about this team. Vegas Golden Knights, I'm throwing them in wild card. I actually could see the Vegas Golden Knights missing the playoffs. I know that might be a bit of a hot take, but they're definitely not one of my favorites in the Pacific. I think they've gotten weaker. I'm just not a huge fan of the forward group for Vegas. Carolina Hurricanes, I'm throwing them in playoff lock, but I think it's like borderline wildcard team. I don't know what it is about this Canes team, but I think they got worse. I still really like them. I still think they're a good team. That's why I have them in playoff lock, because they should make the playoffs. And if they don't, that'll just be a major disappointment. I think they are another team like New Jersey, like honestly any team in playoff lock, that if they miss, it's just a huge L. New York Islanders. See, this is a tough team. This is a team that should be a wild card team, but I also kind of see them in no man's land. Like they're such an in-between team. I'm going to put them in wild card because they always seem to kind of be around that. But they could also be a no-man team. They're kind of weird to me. Like this is a team that I could see being 2 points out of a playoff spot, but this is also a team for me that I could see being like 8 points out, but also not bottom of the league. The Winnipeg Jets, with the Central the way it is, I think they have to be a playoff lock in my opinion. I think that team is just so darn good that they have to be a playoff lock. Like knowing what's in the Central, what teams are below them, what teams are above them, they just have to be. The LA Kings, I want to put no man's land as well, but I'm going to throw them in wild card. I don't think the LA Kings have improved this offseason or this season in general. I think if anything, they might have gotten a little bit worse. I know they're not playing their stupid system anymore, so they're going to be going for some offense, which could be interesting for them. I'm just intrigued to see how they do. I don't have a ton of hope. Seattle Kraken, I'm going to put them in wildcard team as well. I do actually, hot take, I have Seattle in third in the Pacific. I like the Seattle Kraken team. I think they're better than Vegas. Something about them. I think we're going to see a Canucks Seattle Kraken first round matchup this upcoming playoffs, which would be a lot of fun. I want to put them in playoff lock, but just what we've seen from the Seattle Kraken, I just don't think you can do so. Tampa Bay Lightning, I think for sure are playoff locks. No matter what, this team you think is going to be down and out, they still find a way to improve and get better. It's unbelievable. Toronto Maple Leafs, on paper, no lie, they should be a cup contender, but because of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm going to throw them in playoff lock. Edmonton Oilers are for sure a cup contender, as well as the team right behind them. That's the Florida Panthers. Those two teams, I mean, Stanley Cup finalists. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them in the finals again. I think for sure those two are obvious cup contenders. Next, we got the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is another team that could be a wildcard team or could be in no man's land. I think this year they're going to be in no man's land. I actually see them kind of being that team that's like, what the heck are they doing? Obviously they're still trying to be good for Crosby. I just don't see on paper that this team is good. Nashville Predators are super tough for me. I want to put playoff lock just looking at the Central Division, but I just don't know if that's the team they are. I'm going to put the Nashville Predators in wild card. This is such a tough team, but I want to say right now I have them third in the Central. The only reason I have them in wild card spot is because we just don't know what this team's going to do. We don't know how they're going to mesh, how they're going to play. I think they should make the playoffs, but I don't think they're like an absolute lock. New York Rangers, I see them as a cup contender. I think this team is really, really good. They haven't really lost anything. They haven't really improved, but they also haven't gotten worse. I think they're just a good, well-rounded team. Detroit Red Wings, I'm going to put them in wild card. Last year they were as wild card as you could get. Like, I think they, 1 point, or they had the same amount of points as the team that made the playoffs, which was the Caps. I don't remember what it was, but they were right there. Buffalo Sabres, I'm also going to throw them in wild card. I think this is a team that could make the playoffs, could not make the playoffs. Ottawa Senators, they're again another team between no man's land and wild card. I'm going to put them in wild card because I feel like them, Buffalo, and Detroit are all kind of in the same boat here, where one of these teams are like, we have to make the playoffs. Next up, the San Jose Sharks. I'm throwing them in draft lottery. I mean, that's just an obvious one. Next up, Dallas Stars. I'm throwing them in cup contender. I actually have this team winning the President's Trophy. I really like this Dallas Stars team. I think it's also super obvious to pick Florida or Edmonton to win it, or even New York. So that's why I went Dallas, something a little bit different. But I think this team's built to win a Stanley Cup. Next up, the Utah Hockey Club. I have them being a wild card team. I think this team will be fighting for a playoff spot, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they made the playoffs, to be honest. Just looking at the teams that's going to be fighting for it, I wouldn't be surprised. Next, the Minnesota Wild. I think this team is another team that is in no man's land. I don't really think they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot, but I don't think they're in the draft lottery. They're just kind of there. There you guys have it. That is my tier list for the upcoming season. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let me know. And as always, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.